29 בנובמבר 1947.
Professor Alan Dershowitz was involved in some of the most sensational trials of the last 30 years. He was the youngest person ever to be appointed professor of law at Harvard University and is known as an advocate of civil liberties. But he had his start in a very different field.
A friend of mine named Norman Soane's mother had a little sausage company, delicatessen company called Soane's. It was underneath, I think, the Williamsburg Bridge or the Manhattan Bridge, I don't remember. And my job was, when the sausages came out in the machine, I had to tie the knot very quickly at the designated place so the sausage would be exactly the right size. I wasn't too good at it. And when I was young, everybody told me I had a good mouth, but I didn't have a particularly good brain. And so my principal called me in one day and said, you know, find a profession that you use your mouth but not your head. You could either be, he said, a lawyer or a conservative rabbi. I wasn't smart enough to be a rabbi, so I had to become a lawyer.
But you did go to school at the Yeshiva University.
I did, but I was a terrible student in Yeshiva because I was always arguing with my rabbis. My mother always said, get a B, get a B. A, maybe you'll be a teacher. I don't want you to be a teacher. C, it's a shanda. I never got a B in my life. In high school, all C's, college and law school, all A's. I never could get an intermediate grade.
Of course, in later years, you also wrote a book about the Ten Commandments, bringing to bear your legal knowledge on the biblical scripture. Right. Were you aware of those connections when you first started out? Was it clear in your mind that you're walking that line?
No question. No question that my Jewish education, as bad as I was at it, it was very good for me. I assimilated a whole way of looking at law, which was quite different from what one learns in law school. And studying the Talmud, studying the Torah, studying the Mishnah was very, very important to my development as a lawyer.
Can you discuss a little the difference between the Jewish concept of law and the American, or perhaps just the civil concept of law?
Jewish law, everything is a matter of degree. When Abraham argues with God over the sinners of Saddam, he persuades him if there are 50 innocent people, 40, 30, 20, 10 to spare the city, but if there are only 6 or 7 innocent people, maybe it's necessary sometimes for the innocent to suffer to have a legal system that will work. The Jewish law also preserves dissenting opinions. In the Talmud, you read the majority opinion, you read the dissenting opinion. Sometimes you can't resolve an issue. It ends up teku, a tie. It's interesting that Jewish law, though it's supposed to be divine by origin, is very human, and deals extensively with the fallibility of human beings. The Jewish prophets, the Jewish patriarch, are all fallible human beings. Jesus is not fallible. Muhammad is not fallible. You say anything about Muhammad, you know, you could get murdered. But to say something that Abraham was not perfect or Moses was not perfect, you're just quoting the Bible.
Says so.
Yeah.
Professor Dershowitz won renown as an advocate of civil liberties, the rights of the individual within the state. This is part of a larger view of law, the state, and the individual.
Civil liberties recognizes that majority shouldn't always rule, that there are always going to be dissenting views, that there must be a right to free speech, a right to dissent from religion, freedom not only of religion but from religion. There must always be due process, fair trial. The guilty must be defended along with the innocent. I learned that from the story of Saddam and the story of Joseph being falsely accused. All of these come together to say that the rule of law has to dominate over the rule of expedience, that the ends don't justify the means, that tzedek tirdof is what is tzedek today might not be tzedek a year from now. It will change over time. Tirdof also suggests a very dynamic system of justice. You run after justice. You don't sit there and expect that it will hit you over the head and be in a very static situation. The struggle for justice never stays won.
That could leave a lot of people unsatisfied with their sense of justice.
It does,
perhaps.
It does. Look, I defend people both who are guilty or innocent. Sometimes I get the guilty off, and people get very upset with me. They don't understand that I stand for a process, not a result. The ultimate system of justice has to be judged not by whether it produces true results in every case, no system ever could, but whether the process on balance brings about fairness.
You have defended a long line of very famous...
Infamous.
I'm sorry, very infamous clients, among them Leona Helmsley, Pattie Hearst, Mike Tyson, and of course OJ Simpson. But I've heard you refer to both the Pattie Hearst case and OJ Simpson's case as not very important.
They're not very important.
Very interesting perhaps, but not very important.
Not only not important, not interesting in the sense of they're both very boring people. OJ Simpson, I wouldn't want to spend time sitting around it. What was interesting is they were both cases that represented the time. Pattie Hearst, the radical moment in our history. She's kidnapped by the Symbionese Liberation Army. She's brainwashed. Very interesting time in American history. OJ Simpson, race conflict between blacks and whites, killing of a white woman by allegedly a black person. The most interesting cases I've had are some that nobody's ever heard of, or some that some people have heard of. Anatoly Sharansky, Natan Sharansky, fascinating case, because we had to take on the entire Soviet Union. We knew we couldn't win just by legal means. We had to use diplomatic means, political means, economic means, a range of other means that we could use to help free him after several years in prison.
Another field in which Professor Dershowitz won prominence is in defending the state of Israel against detractors. Many of these, he claims, are Jews, misinformed Jews.
After the '67 war, Jews all over the world were beating their chests, saying, well, we're great, we love Israel, it's such a strong army, we're so proud. It became a source of positive identity for French Jews and for British Jews. Today, no. Today, Israel is a source of embarrassment for French Jews and for many British Jews. They want to disassociate themselves because otherwise they won't be invited to dinner parties. So it's very important for people to restore a sense of pride in the accomplishments of the Jewish state. Most of these people, of course, have never been to Israel. They think they know a lot about Israel without ever having involved themselves in the daily life of a country in conflict. You know, Israel is, despite its enormous weaponry, the underdog. It is attacked throughout the world. It is the only state in the world today subject to open threats of annihilation with no accountability. I support Israel because I'm a civil libertarian and a human rights activist. Some people say, oh my God, you believe in human rights and you make an exception for Israel? No, I don't make an exception for Israel. It's because I've always defended the underdog, because I am a Jewish lawyer, Because is the first route to democracy. A tyrant doesn't have to say because. A tyrant says, do it. Right. Or maybe do it because I'm the king, or do it because I'm your mother. Democracy is do it because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Do it because this is the just thing to do. And explanatory justice is the key to democracy. A democratic leader must persuade you in addition to commanding you.
It sometimes appears, whether you are defending O.J. Simpson, which at one point was probably one of the least liked person in the United States.
My mother calls it the Oy vey O.J. phase of my career.
And whether you're defending Israel, it sometimes feels as you're happy to go out fighting. You're looking for adversaries.
I am. I enjoy the battle. Why not enjoy life? I know that I was born to battle. When I was a kid in Brooklyn, I was physically battling anti-Semites and beating people up if they beat me up. I'm no longer capable of doing that, but I hope I'm still capable of using my mind and my verbal abilities to battle. I want to die fighting for my causes. I enjoy it. It takes a lot out of me sometimes, but I really like a good fight. And don't ever, ever attack me and expect not to be attacked back ferociously. That's the way I lead my life.
For all that, Professor Dershowitz still grapples with what it means, to him and to others, to be Jewish.
I used to know what it meant to be a Jew. It was very simple. Every day I put on my tefillin, I put on my talis, and I daven 3 times a day. I made a bracha every time I ate something. And I never ate anything that didn't have the little U with the circle. That was kosher. Right. So being a Jew is very simple. When I was 27 years old, I realized that I was a skeptic. I wasn't born to be a halachic Jew. And I became a strong supporter of Israel, which I always was. What I think I learned later on in life was that growing up in a Jewish neighborhood, I absorbed a lot. My whole life has been a reflection of much of what I was, my parents' values, my relatives' values, my love of Jewish music. I'm writing an opera now, based on, yes, Chazanisha music, based on cantorial music, based on the life of Gerson Sirota, who was a great cantor in Poland and died in the Holocaust. So everything about me is Jewish, and yet my mother doesn't think I'm Jewish enough. Everybody else thinks I'm very Jewish except my mother. Bless her, 94 years old. She still hasn't given up. She still thinks it's not too late for me to come back and be a Jew like her.